So today we're just going to be talking about the decentralized trial reality and what is working and what's quietly failing. So over the next 3 days, I will be speaking. I am horrible at pronouncing names. We'll have Huzafa,
Huzaifa.
Huzefa.
Huzaifa.
He will be speaking tomorrow on AI and clinical research. And then we're going to have Damien Hall. He will be talking about why clinical trials are delayed, and it starts with the principal investigator. Okay. So again, I'm Alicia Moore, and I'm really excited to actually bring clinical research here because, again, it doesn't exist. I am the only one in this area bringing clinical research of anything here. We have partnered with Creo, one of the bigger tech vendors in the industry. We're certified Creo partners, and you can actually find our business in their partnership directory. We're also a minority woman-owned business organization, and we have been certified as a small woman business organization via the SBA. So I was a guest speaker at Walden University at 2024. And again, I truly enjoy what I do. And right now we are training our PI so he can be the first principal investigator at Clinical Science Research Solutions. So on our agenda today, we're going to talk about understanding where DCT, where it improves access and equity. We're going to recognize operational risk in hybrid and tech-enabled models. We're going to identify critical execution failures in real-world settings. We're going to recognize oversight gaps in hybrid models, evaluate financial and operational impact, and what sponsors want and expect from sites and PIs in 2026. You all, questions Q&A will be taken towards the end of the presentation, so make sure you add your questions in the chat and I will do my best to answer them accordingly. So DCT, where is it working? As you can see in this graph, it's working across 4 different categories. Patient access, like in rural areas and underserved areas. It's reducing the patient burden, or you're looking at faster recruitment and select studies, and it's improving diversity representation. So, um, so for your endogenous Afro Americans community, whenever you're looking at the traditional way of clinical trials and enrollment, you're looking at 5%. However, whenever they introduced DCT, it's almost like doubled, 1.9% of DCT trials. In the Asian community, whenever you're looking at the traditional model, you had a 14.2% as far as the participation in clinical trials. However, that actually increased, it went from 14% to 20%. And female representation increased from 49% to 55%. However, in the African American community, that we still only represented 7.3 uh, patient participant enrolling in decentralized trials, and we're going to understand why that is um, here on this next slide. Most of
Oh,
it is still, go ahead.
your slides aren't advancing.
Oh, they're not?
Nope, I'm only seeing the front slide. So I was going to catch you because I can't.
Oh,
I would love to see these. There we go.
oh, is it advancing now?
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
That's
Okay.
okay.
So, as I was talking about as far as participating in the DCT trials, the African American community, the enrollees or the percentage is still quite low, and that still has a lot to do with not having trust within pharma participating in clinical trials due to, the historical mistreatment years ago. So that's still ingrained in the African community um, brain, if you will. And then especially in the rural area where we live, I have talked to several different people, and they are very, very skeptical whenever it comes to just really going to the doctors. And then whenever you start throwing in participating in clinical trials, well, for one, they're asking, well, what is that? And I explained the just the very basics, and then they go on, and you can see the skepticism and the hesitation whenever you even talk about participating in clinical trials, because they feel like, they are being guinea pigs or they're not being taken seriously. And so, why do they feel like they should waste their time participating in trials? But that is why, again, I have birthed my business, because I'm here to, help them feel and know that they're important whenever it comes to participating in clinical trials and why it's important. So again, whenever you look at some of the blood pressure medication, um, there was one, I can't think of it off the top of my head. My uncle, as a matter of fact, he took this particular blood pressure medication, and it doesn't really work in the African American community. So it's things like that or subjects like that. It's very sensitive. I bring it to, the community, their attention, as to, if we don't have enough African Americans participating in clinical trials, so the medicines that are going forth after it's approved, via FDA, it's not going to work within our community. So it's very important that we have that diversity and we get that data in. So whenever physicians are prescribing that type of medicine, it's going to actually work within that community. But if we don't have enough of that patient population participating, whether it's in the traditional way model or DCT, then we're kind of leaving ourselves, I feel like, the opportunities for healing, kind of out of the loop. So it's very important to have these discussions within the community and bring it to them in a way that it's not going to feel like they're not going to feel like you're being insensitive about it and their feelings. Okay, um, so as I kind of mentioned before, and I'll just kind of briefly go through these graphs, it falls short due to the fact that, or why does it fall short? So the representation among the Black participant, it still remains at a low of 5 to 10%, whereas whenever you look at the African American or the Caucasian community, there's a disproportion. You're looking at 0 to 5% for African Americans, and then let's say the Caucasian, it's a 5 to 15% participating in clinical trials. In the therapeutic areas, as you can see, let's say like within cardiology and oncology, the participation, it drops even further below 5% in oncology, and then right here, and then for cardiology, you're looking at a 3% low. So just because we have access to a new model doesn't necessarily mean that the recruitment and participation within other, communities, that you're actually keeping up with it. There's still a gap that needs to be addressed, and you address it with, implementing trust and speaking to the communities and educating them on why participating in clinical trials is a must. So decentralization removes geographic barriers, but structural, trust, and infrastructure barriers still remain. Access has improved, but equitable participation has not kept up with the pace. So again, where is DCT driving the most impact, the most positive impact? So you're looking at an 85% increase in access to patient population. It has reduced the patient burden by 80%. Patient recruitment has increased by 75%. And then, of course, diversity has increased by 78%. So this is just a chart comparing what the traditional model, as far as like the four categories that we discussed, the impact it has made versus DCT. DCT has come along and made a huge impact within the four categories that we discussed, whether it's access to endogenous communities, reducing patient burdens by allowing them to participate in clinical trials remotely for most of the trial. Recruitment speed is a lot easier to have access to those communities. And then, of course, there is an increase by almost not necessarily 30%, but it's getting close to 30% of diversity, which is something that we need in clinical trials overall. So, when comparing traditional and decentralized models, it reveals improved access and participation, but it also highlights increased operational complexity, oversight variability, and execution risk. So, this is just a chart. So, we're looking at access gains versus the execution risk. So, what's the trade off? So, whenever you're looking at the bottom of this graph, as you can see with DCT trials, there is an increase again in, let's see here, recruitment, patient, convenience, access. However, simultaneously, while we have the increase, the positive impacts going on in these four categories, it's still increasing the operational complexity, the oversight variability, site burden increase has it significantly increases in parallel to the increase in access and recruitment, retention, and all that good jazz. So, decentralization drives measurable gains in access, but introduces increasing execution risk that must be actively managed. And again, whenever you have any questions, or if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Um, I have one question for you. What is the biggest risk in decentralized trials today? What do you think the risk could be? And I want to know your opinions. I think, in my opinion, I think there's only one answer, but you may have a reason as to why you may pick maybe B, C, or D.
Well, I have two of them. So, first, the data quality and fragmentation, and then the oversight and PI accountability stick out to me. So A and B, but um, there might be other uh, responses to that.
Does anybody else have any responses? I don't want
I
to sound
definitely,
so monotone,
yeah.
so I
No,
want to
I
make sure I
definitely agree
respect.
that A is the largest risk.
Hmm.
That's our largest problem is the ability to oversee all of the various things as they start to stretch away from your site. You know, home health
Hmm.
is a difficult thing to oversee because you may never have face to face. You may never have that, you know, how do you know? And but that does put a burden on site staff because
Yep.
it's not always the PI who's coordinating all of those things. You need to have like, really strong staffing at site to be able to manage all those chess pieces as they are in motion. So I think that it does also put a burden on staff, especially from operations standpoint. It's a lot easier to manage one tiny thing than it is to
Right.
manage all those chess pieces in movement.
I do know for us at CSRS, we are going to implement DCT, but
Mhm.
proceeding with caution for those
Yeah.
reasons, because, um, I feel like a lot of times whenever patients are participating remotely, mostly remotely,
Mhm.
what are the chances of them actually being um, complying with the what the sponsor wants? Are they really
Mhm.
following the
Yeah.
protocol? I mean, whenever you kind of come in, kind of like your children, you can actually go in and check to make sure they're doing things the
Yes.
right way in your
Right.
home, following the chores and the rules that you have.
Hmm.
Whereas if they just kind of go out there, you don't that oversight is not there, it's
Hmm.
not as strong. So I proceed with caution. I think it's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing to have in the clinical research industry, but it
Hmm.
also has its cons too that I'm a little leery about implementing, but I will still do it, but proceed with caution.
We
Um,
are in very much the same boat here as we are trying to figure out how to wiggle out into all of our satellite sites to provide those patient participants the best
mhm.
access closest to home to be able to get what they need. But, you know, again, cautious, like certain things that are high risk, you come down to the central for every follow-up things, those can be done at home. They're a lower risk. We want to make sure we've got qualified staff available to them, that sort of thing. But yeah, it is it's kind of a scary thing to think now I've got to add, how many more sites that we need to make sure are up to speed and what are all the steps that we're going to potentially forget to do in vetting our locations and ensuring that, we've got good follow-up.
Yeah. And then another thing that comes to my mind is like in this area, transportation, I know it's an issue. A lot of people have a problem with they don't have the transportation to get to their doctor's appointments. So
Yep.
in their minds, they're going to think like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I don't necessarily have to always go to the site, but again, that still poses an
Mhm.
issue. But I think I'm hoping if you can communicate it very well to the patient, like, hey, even though this is remote, we still need you to be compliant. And
Mhm.
just kind of going from there, making sure that they understand their roles. And kind of the same thing at the site level, too, that we need to emphasize, the importance of following the protocol. But again, I think there's so much work to be done in the clinical research industry. I've only been in the industry for 5 years, and bottleneck that sticks out in my mind, for one, was the education.
Mhm.
A lot of times we get into this industry and our education is like basically reading protocols. My background is I come from medical technology, and
Mhm.
that's my BS degree. So you have to go to the hospitals to get the training, and you have the formal education, you have the hands-on training. However, in this space, it's like that part, I didn't understand that.
Mhm.
So a lot of the reasons why I did the partnership was to get rid of some of that bottleneck that we have in the industry. So again, the training is important. The hands-on training is important. So whenever we get to like, certain models like DCT, maybe we can kind of overcome those issues, but if we don't have a strong enough infrastructure, to me, it's going to fail. It won't do very
Right.
well. Um, Let me go back to, that was actually good.
Mhm.
Let's see.
And I will point out your slides aren't showing again. We suddenly went back to just all of us talking. So there we go.
I stopped
Perfect.
sharing it,
Okay,
but
perfect. I just want to make
uh,
sure.
yeah, that's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
Um, so what I found, and then you all mentioned one of the biggest risks was the PI oversight and accountability. You all made some excellent points that it's not just the PI. We have everyone else that should be held, I mean, that could, held accountable for it. So investigators remain ultimately responsible for trial oversight, even in the DCT models. Um, the PI responsibility does not change with DCT oversight. And all remote and delegated activities, I mean, they still have the oversight. And that's another thing that I have come to the realization, even though you have some trained physicians, sometimes the workload is kind of being pushed off to the study coordinators with the idea in mind, like, hey, I'm only here for a few seconds. I got to go. I have a team. They can just back me up whenever. I mean, that's clearly not a good way to have oversight of your trials, even though they have like limited um, a time frame, but you took on this responsibility. So delegating your time will be a must. And it's very important that you know what you're doing. So investigators must supervise all delegated personnel and activities, including third-party providers. And then also the FDA emphasizes that regulatory requirements remain the same regardless of DCT elements. Can you all still see my slides? I want to make sure I'm not just going and going and you can't see it. So when the risk isn't managed effectively, we look at what is quietly failing. And um, so if the PI oversight and accountability are the biggest risks, so the next question becomes what happens when the execution breaks down? And this is where we see the financial and operational impact. So there's a cost delay. $40,000 per day in direct daily clinical trial costs. That's a lot of money to lose. On an average, you're looking at a $500,000 per day of a loss in revenue, and it can get up to 1.1 to 1.8. It can get up to 8 million a day, which is like in your high value therapies, therapeutic areas. And of course, 90% of trials experience delays. So again, the cost of the oversight or the cost of having or implementing DCT trials can, I mean, you're looking at a huge risk here. But again, there risks to everything that we do. So I guess you would have to go and figure out the pros and the cons. And if the pros outweigh the cons, then you can continue on with the DCT trials. However, implementing and figuring out what you can do better so we're not losing so much money per day or per uh, on average. Anybody else have any comments on that? And if you do, you can put it in the chat. So what's working versus what's failing? Recruitment and retention. Um, Recruitment and retention is, again, is one of the bigger bottlenecks in the industry. Um, Whenever you're looking at areas like this, recruitment, you don't really start with recruitment. You start with building a relationship within the community. I don't care what kind of method, whether it's DCT or the traditional way. Recruitment and retention is always going to be an issue, but um, for DCT, apparently it's working in the broader aspect. Again, patients are able to participate in trials. From a remote standpoint, they feel like it's easier, less transportation issues, faster recruitment, but you're not able to retain them. There's still a 30% dropout rate, and there's a high replacement in cost. So access doesn't necessarily equate to retention. So we are successfully increasing patient intake, but we're still facing challenges in maintaining their engagement. I mean, are they becoming bored with it? Are they becoming scared at the fact that they don't know what it's doing to their bodies, even though we are looking at a DCT method? I think those questions and apprehensions, it still remains the same, regardless of whether you have the traditional model or the DCT model. Another thing that's quietly failing at the quietly failing is execution at the site level. Um, so you have an inconsistent infrastructure. So site capabilities vary significantly across locations. Many sites lack standardized systems, staffing, and workflows. The infrastructure gaps directly impact study startup and execution. So execution variability is the highest at the site level. Undertrained investigators. I will say within this area, we do not have any doctors that are trained to be investigators. So if you're implementing a DCT model, it's a little pointless because if you don't have doctors that are trained on the traditional model, well, introducing DCT is not going to help matters. So physicians often enter research without formal operational training, and they have a limited experience with DCT tools and regulatory expectations. So oversight responsibilities increase, but support does not always scale. Again, at CSRS, we have implemented our own academy for the doctors who are not well versed on clinical research or how to be a PI or how the oversight, how that responsibility falls on them. So we have the education and we have the tools that they need so they can be successful in their role, so we can eliminate or try to reduce this type of bottleneck. Another thing that's quietly failing would be fragmented workflows. So you have multiple systems and vendors that create disconnected processes, data flows across platforms without full integration, and coordination challenges increase risk of delays and errors. I'm going to say, even on the traditional level, whenever I entered into the clinical research space and I was a remote site monitor, I remember having all these systems I had to log into and remembering all these not websites, but the passwords. But whenever it was time for site activation, which it can be a whole, it's can be very messy, very, very busy. A lot of times whenever you're trying to get patients enrolled. Well, you can't get anyone enrolled until you have access to maybe CTMS or EDC metadata rave. And sometimes with the sites, or they're thinking, okay, I may have access to the systems, but they try to log in, they don't have access. Then on the CRO side, like the ClinOps team, they're thinking, okay, well, I've given you access to all these systems. So to me, fragmented workflows is still, you still have see it at the DCT level and traditional level clinical trials. So again, sometimes I think we have too many systems, and then sometimes those systems, they do not work. Sometimes we can't get logged in to do the jobs that we need to do. So that's one of the issues that we have at the site level that's quietly failing. Another one is execution variability. So performance differs widely between sites within the same study. Protocol and adherence, data quality, and timelines are inconsistent, and you're probably not meeting those timelines the way you should be. And the variability at the site level drives an overall trial risk. Tech, tech. So with AI being so huge in the industry and not just ours, I'm seeing more vendors popping up saying that, oh, tech can help. Our AI tech can help. Is it really helping, or are we making it more complex? We already have enough tech systems that we have to log into. You're looking at eConsent, ePro, EDC. What devices are the patients using to collect the data? Then you have telehealth. Then you have CTMS. So that can be an overload for not just for the PI, but for the site and the site staff, because if you don't have enough site staff, well, look at all the things that they're having to deal with. And again, I always go back to myself on at the CRO level. I was assigned 50 sites within my first year of being a remote site monitor. So can you imagine just this one site having all these issues and then you're still having to communicate with the PI, the study coordinator, just for that site. And then I'm assigned to several, a couple different studies. So it doesn't just, I don't think it just burdens down or um, it doesn't, it's not, the issue's not just at the site, it's at the CRO level too, with the employees that are trying to help execute these different models and clinical trials. So again, more data doesn't automatically mean better visibility. And DCT trials data is coming from multiple systems, devices, and sources. And really, it's the same thing with traditional trials too. And that can create blind spots in monitoring compliance and real-time decision making. So visibility has increased, but control hasn't always followed. I came across a case study um, that everything looked good on paper. And again, it's not just with DCT trials. Things can look really great on paper, remotely, the data is being captured, but is it the right data? Are you falsifying it? The digital tools, the patient convenience, all those things were great, but in the execution, sites were managing multiple systems. The data wasn't syncing in real time, and staff weren't fully trained across all platforms. Or they're not given enough time to be trained across all platforms because again, you're not looking at just one platform, you're looking at multiple platforms. So the result, you're looking at delays, inconsistencies, and increased burden at the site level. And ultimately that impacts timelines, the cost, and data quality. So the traditional clinical trial model versus DCT. So DCT, or the traditional trials, were centralized and controlled but limited in reach. Again, that's very true for rural areas such as Sikeston, Missouri, because the infrastructure, it just wasn't here. Even the word floating clinical trials, the only time you probably heard anything about clinical trials was maybe if you were diagnosed with cancer or you had something really, really serious going on, but that's the vocabulary, those terms, is just not floating around here, let's say like in your urban areas. Decentralized trials expand access, but it introduces variability. So the question is no longer which model is better, it's how can we create consistency across both models. The risk doesn't necessarily live in the protocol, it lives in the execution. You can have a beautifully written protocol, although protocols are becoming more complicated as time goes on. But at the site level, in workflows, in training, and in the system integration, there can be some broken pieces in there. Again, it can be with the education, it can be with not having access to those tools, lack of training. So the risk, it lies in many different areas. So what are sponsors expecting? For both traditional and DCT models, they're not just investing in innovation, they're investing in predictability, they're investing in making sure that you're not a risk, they're making sure that you can actually enroll the patients population that you set, like during the feasibility. Can you enroll these patients whether you have the traditional model or you're implementing DCT? They need sites that can actually execute consistently, manage data accurately, and minimize delays regardless of the trial model. So 2026, as we move into continuing using DCT, it's not going away, and I'm glad that it's not going away because it still has great benefits. The shifts that we're seeing from rapid to adoption is to operational accountability. Hybrid models are becoming the standard, and there's a growing focus on site enablement, standardization, and execution quality. So, what is the takeaway? Um, you're not going to have all trials are not going to be decentralized, and they're not going to be fully traditional. I think having both models is very important because you're still catering to a different subset of patient different demographics. Um, it's you need to strategically implement that into your site the way we are going to at CSRS. We'll still have the traditional model, having patients come in and uh, follow the protocol. However, there are some that may not be able to get out, especially the ones that are very sick or the ones that I feel like the cancer patients, that comes to my mind because sometimes they're not always able to get out due to the medications that they're on, or they may not have the energy. So that's where DCT is very um, uh, beneficial for that patient population. So organizations that succeed will be the ones who invest in site infrastructure, principal investigator training, workflow integration, and execution consistency. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't it you can have all the innovation in the world, but if you're not executing it properly, if you don't have the right infrastructure or systems in place, it's going to fail and cost you money in the end. So my question to you is, and you can come off mute here in just a second, are we building trials that look innovative or trials that actually work? And if you're working in decentralized or hybrid trials, the opportunity isn't just innovation, it's execution. And does it really start at the site level? I think it starts at the site level, but everybody plays a part. So if you don't think it starts at the site level, where do you think it starts? I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to see if you have any questions and we can still make this more conversational. Again, we don't have to have it as robotic or monotone. Let's see, I'll check the chat here in just a second. Feel like I was a little rushed only because it seems like whenever you're, okay, slides are not advancing. You start the presentation off or you're having technical difficulties, it seems like everything else just kind of falls by the wayside. But any questions or concerns? And also, if you're wanting us to talk more, I'm going to try to have this every year. And if there are topics that you want to hear more about, please let me know in the chat. And you can also email me at, I'll put my email here. And if you also want to be a guest speaker, if you have any experience, and I'm sure you do, with these types of issues, then we would be glad to have you as a guest speaker. Any questions?
Trying to drop your email into my notes. There we go.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a little bit more organized, and I don't feel like I was organized today. But again,
All good.
yeah, great. Dropping my link.
Mhm.
He's dropping his link, so connect with him
Oh,
if you
great.
want.
Okay.
And it's Huzaifa, right? Oh, he dropped out. Okay.
Just dropped.
Myron,
Have
do
I,
you have any questions? Amy?
Mhm.
this was a great presentation.
Oh,
I do think it don't worry about feeling rushed.
Yeah.
That's common as far
We've all been
as,
there.
with having
yeah.
difficulties. Yeah. But I I do agree with everything you said as far as, do we look at trials that are basically more innovative, or is it more effective in a sense to where are we bringing it in a more, I'll put it to you this way because I lost my train of thought. I will say it like this. I think the education portion does not actually, the innovation does not equal better processes, because it goes back to the first opinion of the PIs not being properly trained and educated.
Mhm.
So that is an issue. Uh, how do we combat that? It's not necessarily more technology, it's awareness. Uh,
Mm,
and how do we bring that to the PIs is a little different, because they will always cite that they're too busy.
mhm,
Um, that is an obligation that they have to take on their own as far as responsibility and accountability is concerned.
Mhm.
Because the first measure when they're interested in performing clinical trials is the fact that they are going to be held accountable.
mhm.
No matter who is helping to work the trial with them, they are the ones that are responsible.
And I will say, to piggyback off of that, the PI, or the doctor that we have in training right now, I highly emphasize the amount of oversight and responsibility they will have as a principal investigator. However, educating them and taking him through um, what it takes to be a PI. And so what I actually did was I created a foundational course before
Mhm.
we dive deep into the actual meat of becoming a PI, because I know for those reasons you mentioned, there's a lot of hesitation about, overseeing a clinical trial in addition to my own practice. I still have my own practice. So now you're asking me to oversee something else that I'm going to have more responsibility for, and do I even have the time for it?
Yep.
So I created the foundational course so it can kind of ease them into what they're going to actually have responsibility for, not just the responsibility, who the stakeholders are. So you're
Mhm.
not just going to be communicating with coordinators or the site manager or regulatory within your department, or you're going to have to talk to the sponsors, the CROs, the clinics
Mhm.
team. So I implemented that education because, again, whenever I entered into the industry, I had no idea of who, what, when, and where, and why. What's a
Mhm.
CRA? I even go into defining what is a CRA, what is a CRC. So having those, starting at I call it the preschool level,
Mhm.
and increasing that kind of awareness, then you step it up a notch. And I feel like graduating from preschool to kindergarten to first grade, implementing it slowly and keeping that communication open to where they're not feeling so overwhelmed, I feel like you'll have a better success. And right now, the PI that we're at training right now has been very successful so far, even though I have verbally stated to him, this is what you're going to have to deal with. Of
Mhm.
course, you're going to have a team that's going to back you up, but you're still going to have, a high level of oversight and responsibility. And then, we mentioned FDA, those 483s coming through, how we can kind of,
Mm.
avoid those at all costs. You know, you're going to have to be audited anyway, but some of those audits that, you know, trigger the FDA to come in and audit you can be either reduced or eliminated.
Mhm.
So education is huge, huge for me. And, you know, I would grit my teeth. And whenever I apply to certain roles, it's like, oh, you need to have experience. Okay, but where's the education? Where's the hands-on training?
Mhm.
So it's very important for me and what we're doing here in Sikeston, Missouri. It's a big job, but I enjoy it because I know it's important. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, the training is necessary and more tech. I think we have enough tech right now. And I honestly think I don't know if it's solving any more problem. I don't think it's solving more problems. I think it's complicating them.
Mhm.
Um, if the tech that is created and, and it's new, they need to make sure they're actually asking sites, is it going to help or are we just creating more problems and we're going along with this buzzword of, oh yeah, we have new tech and the PI, this is going to make everything great when it's probably an extra
Mhm.
expense and it's not going
Right.
to make everything great.
When is AI, everybody looks at, well, we'll just use AI for that. I'm like, you realize that AI is a huge data risk
Mm-hmm.
for these types of studies, and you try to
Mm-hmm.
explain to them it doesn't always help. And you're right, tech overload's a huge problem. I work with Myron at St. Louis University, and
Mm-hmm.
our the systems that we have internally, just internally, not counting your EDCs and your, the IVRSs, the sponsor systems. We've got more than a half a dozen systems internally to just get a study opened. And it's a lot. And most of them have gone through upgrades in the last 2 years. And there's a lot of that study fatigue, like the system fatigue. You have to deal with
Mm-hmm.
all the changes to that, and that's hard. And I don't know that the PIs understand the depth of it. It's definitely something that needs to be included in their base training. But the one thing that always stuck with me from what I have learned, especially as you're talking about training new physicians and getting them on, is one bad study on a new investigator will turn them off to research and they
Yep.
will not do a second. So everybody who's doing their very first study, if there are too many hiccups to that study, they will never do a second one. And so your number of potential investigators goes down. And so,
Yeah.
on our end, the people who run operations and the support staff and all that, our goal is to help coach them through to have the most successful study possible so that they are willing to do this again. But yeah, understanding the level of responsibility that goes into a study can be really hard for some physicians because it's so much more than I think they've ever imagined from a paperwork, a review, it if your staff does something wrong, unfortunately you're responsible for that. It's like the level of oversight that they need to actually spend on the study is you can trust your staff, but it's always trust and verify. Like
Mm-hmm.
please go
Yeah.
through the process of verification. I know we've got great staff here. I
Yeah.
trust our staff really well, but it doesn't mean we don't audit our studies.
Hmm. And then another thing, tech, as I mentioned before, before I have a meeting with Takeda on April
Uh,
the 2nd. And for me personally, before I again introduce clinical research to this area, you know, having a relationship with the people, yeah, they know me as Alicia Moore, Isaiah Moore's mother, right?
mhm,
But they don't know what I do. They don't know the importance of this. So again, it's still building the trust and getting the awareness out there. So before, and I've told people this, before I plot a clinical research site here in this area, I need to make sure that I'm partnered with the right organizations. And
mhm,
CREO was one of the big ones for me to partner with because again, you're looking at tech. No one's trained whenever you get into this industry,
mhm,
no one's trained on EDC, CTMS, or why you need it or the financial part of it.
mhm,
So with being a Creo partner, I have access to their sandbox. So again, as I'm training my physician, they're going to know, okay, this is what it means to have tech. This is what it means to have Creo. This is what it means to have EDC. This is what it means to have CTMS.
mhm,
They're going to be aware of that. So I've implemented that into the training program, whether it's for CRC, whether you're entering into clinical research and you know nothing about it, whether it's the CRC training or the CRA training, regulatory training, doesn't matter. I have implemented that for those reasons. So again, it also reduces, hopefully, the amount of training that they have to do at the site. Even if they're not using Creo, they're still going to have
Mhm.
some kind of idea on how to use a tech, at least in that aspect. So that's one of the things I didn't see being implemented in this industry, and I thought it was very important to do so. So again, I'm really big on education. I'm really big on having the hands-on training too, so you know what you're doing whenever you get in there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, 5 more minutes. Anything else?
I, I do have a question.
Sure.
So with your location in Sykeston, I didn't see where we had any affiliated sites. And that's where I was wondering how, if there were any potential opportunities to even have clinical trials. As you basically stated early in the presentation, there's a trust issue. So I know in Sikeston there is a very large population of indigenous African American people.
Yep.
Um, uh, and so the thing about it is, how do we reach and communicate to those patients, those subjects that who want to participate, um, and possibly have a collaboration between our site and yours because of the trust. That's what I was thinking as the presentation, as you were giving the presentation.
Um, I started on a smaller level. I go to the Y. There are a lot of people that know me at the Y, and I have a marketing team. I do a lot of videos and things like that to get to a larger audience because a lot of people are on the internet. So what I've done, whether I've been at Starbucks, the Y, the grocery store, I've actually started talking to people one on one in the
Mhm.
African American, not just the African American community, but definitely the African American community. And then what I have done, I've communicated some of what I want to do with the CEO of the Y, and we're going to be doing a collaboration like health and wellness events and things like that to because I know there are some doctors that go there. They have certain programs that they host at the Y. So I've actually started with small conversations. I've started with small conversations with the bishop. I've started small conversations with other pastors. And then even at the bank, I've started small conversations there. So now, since I've been doing this since 2023, branding and talking about it online consistently, and within the last year, I've really been pushing it out. Now they're looking at me and saying, "Oh yeah, even at Nissan, which is 30
Mhm.
minutes away from here, I've even had those conversations there." So now whenever I go back, they're asking, "Well, you're the science girl. How's the what is it again? Clinical research?" I say, "Oh yeah, it's going." That
Uh,
and I implement those conversations in a way that it's not just blurted out. I seamlessly implement them in a way that it says, "Oh, okay, well, how are you doing today?" And oh yeah, I'm doing this, that, and the other. Oh, I'm busy. I have such a busy schedule. That's how I'm able to interweave those conversations. And I've done it at the doctor's office as well, at the front desk. So again, people, now the word is getting around, spreading abroad. But what I will like to do, and I've talked to, um, and again, it's instead of me just getting a building and having an empty building and leasing and wasting money and paying mortgage at the same time, I've talked to a lawyer, and there is a building out there, and you start off lean. And I've told him about what I'm going to do. And the space that I want to lease is it will be perfect, but there's a quilting business that's in his building, and the lady, his secretary, introduced me to the ladies that were working there. So, and my mom used to have at least a office there, but she introduced me as, "Oh yeah, this is Shirley Harris's daughter. Oh, hi, how are you? And what do you do?" And that was another way for me to implement that kind of conversation. So if the word is getting around, it's getting around slow, but I want it to be that way because again, whenever it's time to open up the site, by that time I have my PI trained. People are going to be well aware of, oh yeah, clinical research. You're still going to have some hesitations, which I've come across
Mhm.
within the community, but that's okay. Everybody's not going to be like, oh yeah, let's just do this. They may come later on down the line. but I'm having those conversations. But I would like to have a nice event here in Sikeston, Missouri, to again bring more awareness. That way, it's not just online all the time because sometimes people are just, I mean, they may scroll through, or I've gotten the thing or the question, oh, yeah, I've seen what you're talking about, but I still don't understand it. So I like those kind of conversations because it gives me the ability to explain it even more just in bite-sized pieces because I have a tendency to overwhelm people and I have forgotten. Sometimes you forget, like, this is where you started. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you've been in the industry for so long, you just want to talk and talk and talk, but you got to remember, like, they don't know anything about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's start at the basic level and then go from there. And then they start asking questions. But that's how I'm doing it, and it seems to be working fine, but slowly but surely.
Awesome.
Hmm.
No, that's fantastic. I think that I do think that you're going to be very, very successful, especially in the area that you're in. I don't see a lot of clinical trial activity down there, which was
Hmm.
intriguing when I met you on the webinar. So one of the things that I wanted to do was see if we could help develop that relationship. So
Yes.
Amy is
Mm-hmm.
my colleague, as she stated. Basically, she's the director of the clinical trials office.
Hmm.
Anything
Stop
that
it. There are two directors in the clinical trials office. Do not diminish Katya on
okay,
her
I'm
side.
sorry, the
I'm on the
co-director,
operations side. It is a dyad. I get after people. Katya
co-director.
has been here so much longer than me. I do not want her to
That
lose
is correct. That is
her.
correct. I'm
She
sorry. Let
built
me
so
back up.
much of this department. She brought me on.
Co-director
So
of the CTO.
I'm not, there's two directors in the CTO. It's a weird situation, but I don't,
Now,
I,
you know I wouldn't do that to Katya,
I
but
know you wouldn't, but I've heard people do it a couple of times and I just have to stop and go, I, I don't want to be in charge of the whole department. I'm happy with just the operations arm and she can handle all the numbers. But
so
yes.
basically, I was hoping, and I'm
Mhm.
glad you did, Amy.
Yeah.
So the things that we're tackling,
Mhm.
the things that you have issues with, as far as down in Sikeston, are the same things that are occurring here at SLU.
Hmm.
Especially the whole AI thing that's about to blow up for everyone.
Yeah.
I really hope that in some way that we can build some sort of collaboration, keep in communication with each other to make to see
Yeah.
how that we can build uh, processes as well as build. I would say I don't view this as like a camaraderie, but my whole thing is a collaboration
Yeah.
because we're in two different areas that
Hmm.
we think how we build this together and we keep the connections going.
I would be all for that. Again, it takes more than just me going around talking about it. You need oh, and another thing too, which would bring, I think, more awareness. Of course, you have your doctors, and again,
Mhm.
the partnership with CREO. But whenever people see that I'm in collaboration with SLU, they're going to just go wild over it because it's home. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things that after I have partnered with Creo, I said I really would love to partner with whether it's a university or another business within my home state because I want people to feel comfortable with, okay, yeah, oh wow, everybody knows flu. Everybody knows that, Wash U. They're comfortable with at least the physicians. There are a lot of our patients are. I've even been transferred to
Mhm.
St. Louis for medical treatment. So whenever they see those type of collaborations, I think it will make a stronger impact in their mindset on how they think things and just how they view clinical trials overall. And then also they're seeing me. I'm the heart of it. So before again, they don't care about seeing these big companies come through. The person that's in the community that has the
That's their person.
relationship, they're going to trust them more over someone else.
Hmm.
So you have me, and then we have the collaboration with SLU. We have the collaboration, the partnership with Creo that that has more of an impact than anything else. So there's
Right.
layers to it, in my personal opinion, anyway.
Yeah. No, no, exactly. Our health partner is SSM. So that's why and I know for sure that they're definitely they're looking to establish create partnerships, especially
Oh.
mainly they're in Illinois, but I would,
Hmm.
and of course in the Missouri region, St. Louis region, but
Mhm.
I would think that their new venture would probably be southern
Okay.
Missouri.
Because they're
Okay.
So
definitely in southern Illinois, and you would think just, and they're in southwestern Missouri down into
yes,
Oklahoma, and you'd think they're going to want to start
yes,
filling in
Mm.
gaps. It's an untapped population. It's also a great place for us to, create some partnerships.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And honestly, this is a dream come true for me because again,
Mhm.
it's a big task to take on, but
Mhm.
having the partnerships and building those relationships, I think it makes it a lot easier, to get through to the
Yeah.
population and, have the diversity in clinical trials.
I grew up in a rural town, and I know Sykeston's much larger than the town I grew up in. I cannot imagine the lift of trying to convince people that this is a thing that we should have locally. Like,
Yeah.
you
It's
got to get
it's
past
it's
you got to get past the general education barriers. You've got to get,
yes.
or just the general education and literacy barriers, the scientific literacy barriers, and then the health literacy barriers, where you've
Mhm.
just got, I don't need to know these things. Is basically, I don't need to know these things. I will deal with these other things. I don't need to learn and understand this. And
Yep.
without having some of that, being able to bridge those barriers, they don't, you can't convince them that
Hmm.
that this is a benefit to both them and society.
Yep.
It's kind of a scary thing because again, there's a huge amount of mistrust. We,
Yeah.
as, and I say we in the general royal we of clinical research and physicians, did so many hinky things because they could. There were
Yep.
no rules. Every time
Right.
somebody's like, well, that's a weird rule. I'm like, yeah, because somebody did something cruddy in the
Hmm.
past. We did bad things because we
Hmm.
thought we knew better.
Yeah.
And every single thing, like every single reason why, institutionalized children, you say that today, and you're like, well, of course we wouldn't do that. I'm like, oh, we wouldn't? We did.
Yeah.
We lied, and people who are rural and poor were always easier targets to,
Mhm.
even my mother's generation, she'd be in her 90s today. If the physician told you to do it, then you should, because they're way more intelligent than you. They went to medical school. And it
Mhm.
was just this deference of I should do that. And then in other cultural areas, I can imagine I don't trust my physician because I don't know that they trust me.
Yeah.
We've made such foolish thoughts and choices as people. I don't know. I can think of all of the various barriers. We don't have good research on women because we just didn't. We just
Mhm.
default, default.
Mhm.
We don't
Yeah.
have a good, for the longest time, we assumed that African Americans had different pain tolerances.
Yeah.
And you have to grasp, why did you think that? Probably because we forced them to tolerate a lot of things and they didn't have the ability to speak out about it. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yep.
it's not physical, it was social.
Yep.
But we haven't spent any time studying that, and we haven't gotten rid of that thought. We
Mm-mm.
haven't gotten rid of the thought that everyone deserves the same pain management. And until you can get past those barriers, the level of trust to participate in clinical research, you've got to really trust your physician to do that.
Yeah. Another thing, the endogenous community. I'm actually going to be a vendor, or this individual is bringing me on as a vendor for the
Mhm.
Native American community. Yeah, we have a
Oh.
meeting tomorrow. And that to me is a huge impact because they suffered from a lot of mistreatment and,
Mhm.
some of the things that well, I mean, they were lied to whenever
Mhm.
it came to participating in clinical trials and the data wasn't used properly or they mishandled the data.
Mhm.
So again, partnering and being a vendor for that community, for that business is very powerful as well because now again we're having to start from scratch because of the mistrust. And I'm very honored to be a vendor in that community for that community because there's some similarities there. one of the individuals said that, oh, we need a strong African American woman because that she just gets it. Not just get
Mhm.
it, but you understand why they feel the way they feel, and you approach it with sensitivity, and you approach them as anyone you should,
Mhm.
as human beings
Mhm.
first.
I'm so glad you're doing that. To me, the fact that we've left out so many communities in medicine
Hmm.
bothers me so much. And I was like, you can't just turn around and say, oh, we're going to fix that now. Why should I trust you that you're going to fix that now? I feel left out. I hate that there are others left out. Our medicine shouldn't be built on old white men. I just just medicine shouldn't be built on old white men. That's
Yeah,
we our medicine for children is built on old white men. I'm tired of them.
yeah.
I'm honestly tired of them. Myron can laugh. I talk like this all day long. I've got plenty of them here that I'm sure they're all lovely, but it's time. It's time to really think about humanity as a whole, the variations in genes and hormones and things that
Hmm.
affect the way that we take medicines.
Hmm.
Medicines should be for all, not for a sliver.
Yeah. And I could not think of the blood pressure, and I'm going to say this, and it's
Oh,
another.
I know what you're talking about. There's one blood
Um,
pressure medication that does nothing for African Americans, and then there's a whole different one that works amazingly well, specifically in African American
I
populations.
take
And they only knew that because of a sub study that was done, because they were going to can the whole thing because it didn't work well in the white population.
no, that's
Yeah,
awful. I
I
take
know.
amlodipine. Amlodipine works just fine for me,
Me-
but the one that my uncle took, he had a reaction to, and he passed away from it.
Oh,
And I cannot think of the name of it, so for the life of me. And I've heard other horror stories about this blood pressure medication because, as a matter of fact, they try to um, uh, prescribe me that same one. And I said, oh, no, no, thank you. We need to try something different because my uncle passed away from that. And I've heard horror stories about how that one does not work in the African American community. And I'm saying to myself, well, as a physician, why are you not giving me more options? You should know this information by now, but
you
you
would
know,
think.
but that's a whole nother topic. But I cannot think of the name of it. I'll look it up here shortly. But anyway, I feel like this was a great after talk.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then I'm looking forward to the collaboration partnership with SLU and seeing how big of an impact we can make.
it
Yep.
was great meeting you today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Anything else?
definitely working on it. So
Okay.
I know you hadn't heard from me in a while, Lisa, so it's been a little busy around here.
That's okay. That's okay. I understand. As I said,
So
I have a meeting with Takeda on April the 2nd, which I'm excited about. I didn't feel comfortable with reaching out to sponsors until I've gotten to this point in my career and in the business, and until I actually had a physician training on board because it didn't make sense to me to approach them, and I didn't have that already. So but yeah, I'm excited about that. For a small town lady in this area, nobody's doing it here. So I'm excited about it, and it is a lot of work, but I don't mind it at all.
we applaud you.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Right. Good luck
Uh,
with everything.
we
All right.
will look forward to. I will be attending. I don't know about Amy, but I'll be there
I'm
tomorrow. So
I'll
yep.
be on the next two. Yeah. I've got them. I got
Okay.
my calendar marked off. I'm excited about both of those, especially Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah, Damien, he's my lead instructor for the academy. So
Mm,
I brought him on because he's got a breadth of experience and knowledge, a
mhm,
lot that I do not have, which complements what we need for my organization. So he'll be speaking on
mm.
Wednesday. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.